calculated murder-suicide in Radnor Township.
This murder-suicide is shocking to this community, shocking to so many who knew Meredith Chapman. She was a new big name to this area. Our hearts are broken by the devastating loss of our new.
From a once happy home to a murder-suicidal case caught up in the love triangle, it is a narrative of 3 irreversible lives, 2 deaths, and 1 regret that must be told. On the other hand, after what had started as an innocuous flirtation quickly turned into a passionate love affair, Mark came clean about his infidelity and started the difficult process of getting what he believed to be a fair but long overdue divorce. What do you think happened to the once happy home? Who killed who? And what are the untold secrets found afterwards? Join us as we unfold the twisting case of Gerardot couple. This is Unsolved Files, a place where true crime stories are being brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more intriguing and suspense-filled crime stories. Now let's get back into this story and uncover this mystery. It was in Fort Wayne, Indiana during the summer of 1986 when Gerardot first met Jennaire Cox. She worked at Taco Bell, and they were both teenagers at the time. Immediately, Gerardot saw Jennaire. He fell in love with her. On the other hand, Jennaire's large, lovely eyes and broad smile were praised by Gerardot as being striking features. He, however, commented on how well she dressed in a brown polyester uniform. He was unable to even communicate, so he was kind of stuck. It took approximately 4 years for their romance to start off, when Gerardot stumbled across Cox again and discovered that she had moved on to a nearby mall. He started going to see her frequently, and one day he claimed she forced him to approach her. She said, "Are you going to ask me out or what?" He was quite shy and nervous. This openness was what initially drew Gerardot to Cox. Gerardot noted that she had a self-assured and fearless manner, characterizing her as the complete opposite of himself. They both got married on October 23, 1993, a few years after they first met in college. At that time, Mark was just 25 years old, while Jennaire was 23 years old. They solidified a relationship that had started in their youth and continued throughout maturity. However, as is the case with any partnership, Mark and Jennaire Gerardot experienced difficulties at times during their union. He predicted that his wife would prevail in their epic conflicts since she tended to have the final word. The pair had previously experienced financial stress and worry regularly, but everything changed for them when the 2008 financial crisis started. However, the couple relocated to Greenville, South Carolina in November 2011, having secured new marketing positions there. They had a bit of a renaissance for their marriage with the new surroundings, visiting the beautiful beaches and mountains of the state on a regular basis. And by 2017, they had reached a dead end in their new life in South Carolina. After being led away from her job, Jennaire Gerardot was having trouble finding another job. Not only that, but she also started to doubt herself, thereby losing confidence in herself. The couple once more determined that it was time to look elsewhere for fresh prospects and a fresh start. Their marriage was having problems at the beginning of this fresh start, so Mark turned to another woman for consolation in order to find peace of mind. Nevertheless, through email, Mark Gerardot got to know Meredith Chapman. While looking for a new position, he discovered that the University of Delaware was searching for a creative director for its marketing department, and Chapman happened to be in charge. After a while, she replied to his email asking about his qualifications, and she promptly scheduled an interview with him. His worries that he would be managed by a woman 15 years his junior quickly faded. And within 5 minutes of sitting across from her, he whispered, not aloud but quietly, "I have to work for this person?" She accomplished a great deal for her age to be in the position she was in, and she was very articulate, vivacious, and dedicated to her work. Still, he was astounded. After accepting a job offer in November 2017, Gerardot relocated to Wilmington, Delaware. He was thrilled about his work advancement in addition to his impending move to the north. He had no idea that this would also mark the beginning of his marriage's demise. Mark Gerardot lived alone in Delaware during the first 45 days of his life, while Jennaire Gerardot briefly stayed behind in South Carolina to lease their home. He claimed that at that time he got to know Chapman fairly well. They found out they had a lot of things in common, and so one day she asked him out for a drink. Mark Gerardot remarked of that evening, it was easy to talk to Chapman, and he had informed her about losing his brother and parents. He also talked about his wife, however not always in a bad light. He claimed he had no idea what was going on and that, although he felt fantastic when his wife was around, he was perplexed by the emotions he was experiencing. When Mark Gerardot was with Chapman, he maintained that his marital problems also became apparent. Meredith enters the scenario and takes advantage of the situation. However, she immediately begins to tell Mark a very different version of his abilities. Meredith called Mark a great man, a description Jennair had never before used for him. But that just left a lasting effect on Mark. This woman, whom he finds admirable, is expressing her opinion of him as a magnificent man. Mark Gerardot claimed that the two had their first kiss 4 weeks after he first met Chapman. He claimed that even though the energy was there, he felt terrible right away. Now, because of the love he had for wife, Mark Gerardot informed Chapman that whatever was about to happen couldn't happen because they were both married. He said Chapman had told him that she was 9 years into an unhappy marriage, but he soon discovered that he also couldn't give up on the feelings he was having for her. There was this connection as such that captivated him. It felt wrong to shut it down, so he had to at least discover what it was that drew them both in. Jennair Gerardot's husband and Chapman had declared their love for one another before they had even traveled to Delaware. It seems like Mark Gerardot had a strong sense that it was appropriate to confess his love for Chapman. However, Jennair Gerardot sensed her husband was drifting far from their relationship when she traveled north in December 2017, and that she soon confronted him about her feelings that he might be seeing someone else. Meanwhile, she finally questioned him about their bad relationship, bringing up Meredith's name. Shocked, Mark claimed that by then he had mentioned Chapman multiple times, but always in the context of her business protocol. Despite her husband's first denials, Jennair Gerardot kept having doubts about his relationship with Chapman. According to Mark Gerardot, she monitored him and possessed enigmatic knowledge about the affair he was having with Chapman. He stated he didn't understand how she was aware of it. Well, would you blame her? When a woman is suspicious of you, she investigates more than the FBI. By the time Valentine's Day rolled around on February 14, 2018, Jennair Gerardot had at long last obtained the confirmation that she had been searching for. On the other hand, her husband's admission of having an affair came at the expense of her own. She disclosed to her husband that she had paid an agency to acquire access to his phone, which enabled her to read his texts, view his images, and keep a log of the calls he had made to Chapman. Also, marriage counseling was something that Mark and Jennair Gerardot decided to do together. When Mark Gerardot was putting on his jacket on the day of their second session, he felt something popping in the inner fabric of his coat. After cutting it apart, he realized that it was an audio recording device and that it was recording him at that precise moment, as indicated by the flashing light. Initially, he believed that it was an anti-theft device that was concealed within the lapel.
And I reached inside my pocket and I felt what I thought was a anti-theft device. So I thought, why is there an anti-theft device inside the lining of my jacket?
His wife, Jennair, expressed her desire to gain an understanding of the extent to which he and Meredith were involved in the relationship before she notified him. She was adamant that Meredith and Mark had a plan, and she was making an effort to listen to an explanation of what that strategy was.
She was determined that there was a plan between Meredith and I, and she was trying to listen to what that plan was.
The connection between Mark and Jennair Gerardot began to deteriorate at a rapid speed after that particular incident. With immediate effect, Mark Gerardot informed his wife that he intended to initiate the divorce process in May, once he had satisfied the residency criteria of Delaware. It was at this time that Chapman relocated to Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, which is located within the Main Line region of Pennsylvania. She had been offered a position at Villanova University, which is located in Pennsylvania. She was also going through the divorce process with her husband. Okay, so what is it with the divorce? Is there some kind of divorce ritual going on with Mark and Chapman? As Chapman and Mark Gerardot maintained their connection, Jennair Gerardot started seeing divorce counselor Sheila Brennan. Brennan stated that she had a great deal of jealousy and anger over being tossed away and being traded in for a younger woman. In addition, she was quite concerned about the possibility of being left financially behind because she had recently relocated to the north and had not yet found a new job 1 year after she had lost her previous one. Jennair Gerardot even made a threat to leave the house by jumping out of the window at one time, and her husband was aware of this threat. It was his recommendation that she seek the assistance of a psychiatrist, and he also requested that his wife seek encouragement from her friends and family. He stated that she had taken his advice and that she appeared to have evolved into a more understanding person regarding the impending divorce. When Jennair Gerardot contacted her husband with a list of requests for the weeks coming up to his official move-out, Mark Gerardot stated that he believed that they had made it through the most difficult challenges that they had faced together. For example, going on walks together, having dinner together, and generally spending some time together were all items that were included on that list. Despite the fact that it was strange, he was attempting to get this thing so that she would be in a good place. And if this was what she needed, then he was going to do that for her. The majority of the time, Mark Gerardot reported that his wife was behaving normally, despite the fact that she would occasionally become emotional and cry over the course of the subsequent weeks, severally. However, she had been plotting her vengeance behind everybody's back. What do you think could be Gerardot's secret plan? Nobody knows. But let's continue as we unfold some deep secrets hidden amid love. Mark and Gerardot were scheduled to meet for dinner on April 23, 2018, to negotiate divorce agreements. However, Gerardot informed her husband, who was already present at the restaurant, that she was running late in a series of text messages. She then instructed him to return home, stating that she would not be able to make it. Subsequently, she transmitted an image of refuse featuring a contraceptive amidst it, leading him to believe that she was inspecting the garbage can adjacent to Chapman's residence. He eventually began to receive additional text messages. However, one text message stated, "You destroyed my life. I wish you eternal sadness, and goodbye, Mark." However, upon failing to receive a text message from Chapman, Mark Gerardot immediately recognized that something was amiss. He hurried to her residence in anticipation of witnessing a dispute between his wife and Chapman. But instead, what he found sent a chilling sensation down his spine. Chapman was discovered face down on the floor of her kitchen, with a pool of blood forming around her head when he arrived. He discovered his wife's body nearby, also scattered across the floor. He froze for 5 seconds, let out a scream, and ran to his wife. His only utterance was, "Baby darling, what have you done?" Tim Mulvey, a neighbor of Chapman's, was present at the residence when Mark Gerardot arrived at Chapman's apartment. He reported that upon hearing the scream, he came outside to investigate the situation. Mark Gerardot instructed Mulvey to dial 911. However, Sergeant Christopher Four of the Radnor Township Police Department expressed profound distress upon receiving the call, noting that such incidents are not uncommon for them to encounter. Upon their arrival, the situation was somewhat disorderly. A large number of officers were present. Mark Gerardot, who appeared to be hyperventilating, was placed in the back seat of an ambulance before being transported to the police station as a suspect in the crime, according to Police Chief Christopher Flanagan. Upon interrogating him and discovering the firearm utilized in both fatalities beneath the remains of Gerardot, the police concluded that she had infiltrated Chapman's residence, where she had murdered Chapman before committing suicide herself. The subsequent weeks witnessed the exposure of Gerardot's intricate scheme to surveil her spouse and Chapman with the ultimate intention of executing her. A day after the murder-suicide, the police received a tip from someone who claimed to have seen a woman using binoculars to search the house while wearing a trench coat, hat, eyeglasses, and possibly a wig. Additionally, police found a set of car keys at the crime scene, which they identified as belonging to a Cadillac that Gerardot had rented. Mark Gerardot was taken aback upon discovering the following regarding the Cadillac. He learned this information primarily from the news and the authorities. 2 weeks prior, she had rented the vehicle, which was presently parked in front of their residence. The Cadillac contained all of the items related to the disguise that the neighbor had described. Mark Gerardot stated that he continued to search for additional evidence of his wife's secret and discovered that she was leading a double life after examining her bank statements, phone records, and computer backup. Immediately following Valentine's Day, when he confessed to his wife about the affair, he claimed Gerardot opened a covert bank account and credit cards. The credit cards were utilized to acquire audio surveillance equipment, in addition to a lockpicking kit, computer malware software, and clothing DNA testing kits. Wow. I would say this woman is really strong. Why go through all these troubles, then later take your life? That's absurd. Mark mentioned that she even purchased advanced GPS tracking devices and installed them in his vehicle and that of Chapman, too. Mark Gerardot stated in a statement, "I believe there were more than 400 pictures of intimate texts and Snapchat conversations that Meredith and I had, and she would actually get access to my phone in the middle of the night." His best estimate, though, about how she got into his phone was that she would unlock it by placing his thumb on the thumb reader while he slept on the couch. Furthermore, on March 20th, 2018, 5 weeks prior to committing the murder-suicide, Gerardot purchased the firearm she would use. According to Mark Gerardot, her credit card transactions revealed that she had fired the rifle 3 times for practice. He said that his wife used more than just the audio recording equipment he discovered in his jacket. He discovered files with hundreds of hours of audio that his wife had captured, even going so far as to transcribe the audio into notebooks after she had hidden many devices in his clothes. She would pull the recorder out again, stitch it in again, download it, and repeat the process every day. She'd spent weeks doing that. He claimed that his wife emailed a letter to her family members the night she killed Chapman and herself, outlining her motivation to a very chilling degree. Weeks prior, she had begun the letter, and she dated her entries. Why did she do it? Is it as simple as this? Yes. This is payback for what he did to her. After reading Gerardot's letter, Dr. Roby Ludwig, a psychologist who has studied homicide within marriages,
it's very hard to see somebody's failed psyche, sometimes on the outside.
hypothesized that Jenner may have been pressured to kill Chapman and herself because she could not bear losing the love of her life. She was at her most dangerous time when she lost hope in life and started thinking about taking her own life. All of this was eventually done to hurt him. In this scenario of her life and her husband's, she wanted to be the judge and jury. However, Mark Gerardot said he wished he had handled the separation with his wife differently more than a year after the murder-suicide. I broke her heart, and more than anything, out of all of this, my regret comes back to breaking her heart and making her feel like she had no other choice, he stated. I wish that since I loved her, I hadn't hurt her. I still adore her. I long to go back and undo it. However, he's also making an effort to advance. He claimed to have driven by Chapman's house multiple times, and that doing so had enabled him to accept what had happened and made him move on. Meanwhile, Mark Gerardot started writing as a way to heal. He claimed to have suggested that he, not her, ought to have died in a private letter to Chapman. Mark Gerardot has published a book manuscript about the incident, in addition to other writings about it. He expressed that doing so had been cathartic and that he hoped readers would take lessons from his mistakes. Numerous married individuals experience many of the same challenges that Jenner and Mark faced, but they might not all end in the same manner as theirs did. However, Mark believes that a lot of the book's arguments and passion are typical of married couples. What is your take on this? Do you think Jenner did the right thing by killing herself? Let us know in the comment section below. Have you ever thought that ordering an Uber ride could possibly send someone to an early grave? Check out our previous video on the case of Samantha Josephson.